He terraced house at 47 Ashworth Street in Greenwich looked identical to dozens of others on the quiet residential road, its red brick facade and small front garden offering no indication that it harbored the most sought-after child in Britain. Sergeant Mitchell crouched behind a parked car 50 meters away, studying the building through high-powered binoculars while tactical teams positioned themselves at strategic points around the property. The white Ford Transit van sat directly outside, its presence both confirming their target and serving as a stark reminder of how close they had come to losing Princess Charlotte entirely. Detective Inspector Harrison coordinated the operation from a mobile command vehicle parked around the corner, his voice steady and professional as he communicated with units surrounding the house. Thermal imaging confirms 3 individuals inside, he reported through Mitchell's earpiece. 2 adults and 1 child-sized figure in what appears to be the front room. No indication of weapons or immediate distress. The decision of how to proceed had sparked intense debate among the security team. Dr. Morrison advocated for a negotiated approach, arguing that Charlotte's apparent cooperation with her kidnappers meant a violent rescue could traumatize her more than the kidnapping itself. Sir Geoffrey Whitmore, representing palace interests, wanted swift action to minimize public exposure risks. Mitchell found himself caught between these competing priorities while bearing ultimate responsibility for Charlotte's safety. We go in soft, Mitchell finally decided, his years of experience guiding the choice. Plainclothes approach, minimal visible weapons, treat this as a welfare check rather than a hostage rescue. If Charlotte truly believes this is an educational experience, we don't want to shatter that illusion more dramatically than necessary. The surveillance team had been monitoring the house for 2 hours, learning crucial details about the situation inside. Through directional microphones, they had captured fragments of conversation suggesting Charlotte was indeed engaged in what she perceived as an ongoing educational discussion. David Chun appeared to be answering her questions about everything from household budgets to public transportation, while a second individual, identified as Sarah Bennett from social services records, seemed to be facilitating the conversations. This is more complex than a simple kidnapping, Dr. Morrison observed as she analyzed the surveillance data. Sarah Bennett has a background in social work and educational advocacy. She's been involved in campaigns for educational equality and has written articles about privilege disparity in British society. This appears to be an ideologically motivated attempt to educate Charlotte about social inequality rather than a traditional criminal enterprise. The revelation about Sarah Bennett's background had emerged from rapid database searches once they had identified the house's registered occupant. Her involvement explained the sophisticated planning behind Charlotte's abduction and the carefully structured educational experience she was receiving. Bennett had access to institutional knowledge about child psychology and educational methodology, making her far more dangerous than a typical kidnapper because she genuinely believed her actions were beneficial. As evening shadows lengthened, Mitchell made his approach to the front door, accompanied by Detective Constable Emma Walsh, whose friendly demeanor and experience with children made her ideal for the initial contact. They had rehearsed their approach carefully, planning to present themselves as family liaison officers conducting a routine follow-up rather than revealing the full extent of the search operation that had been underway. The doorbell's chime seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet street. Mitchell counted heartbeats while they waited, aware that this moment would determine whether the situation resolved peacefully or escalated into something far more dangerous. When the door finally opened, Sarah Bennett appeared exactly as her photographs suggested. Middle-aged, wearing casual clothes, with intelligent eyes that immediately assessed the 2 officers standing before her. Ms. Bennett, Mitchell began, his voice carefully neutral. I'm Sergeant Mitchell from the Metropolitan Police. We've received reports about concerns for a child's welfare at this address. May we come in for a brief conversation? Bennett's reaction was immediate but controlled. Her face registered recognition of what this visit represented, but she maintained her composure while calculating her options. Of course, she said finally, stepping aside to allow them entry. Though I think you'll find the child in question is having quite an educational experience. The front room revealed a scene that would remain etched in Mitchell's memory for years afterward. Princess Charlotte sat cross-legged on a worn carpet, surrounded by notebooks, drawings, and what appeared to be a detailed journal of her day's experiences. Her face was animated with enthusiasm as she looked up at the entering officers, showing none of the fear or distress they had expected to find. "Oh, hello," Charlotte said brightly, apparently unsurprised by their appearance. "Are you here to learn about how regular families live too? Sarah and David have been teaching me the most fascinating things about budgets and public schools and community centers. Did you know that most children have to share bedrooms with their siblings?" Mitchell felt his heart break a little at her innocent enthusiasm, realizing how carefully Bennett and Chun had manipulated her natural curiosity. "Hello, Princess," he said gently, maintaining the calm tone that had served him well in countless difficult situations. "Your family has been quite worried about you. They weren't sure where you'd gone for your educational visit." David Chun emerged from what appeared to be the kitchen, his posture tense but not aggressive. Mitchell noted that he kept his hands visible and made no sudden movements, suggesting he understood the precarious nature of their situation. "She's been perfectly safe," Chin said quietly. "We've been very careful to ensure she wasn't frightened or uncomfortable." "I haven't been frightened at all," Charlotte interjected, her voice carrying the confidence of a child who had spent her life surrounded by adults who listened to her opinions. "This has been absolutely brilliant. Did you know that children in regular families get to choose what they want for breakfast every day, and they don't have to ask permission to play in their own gardens?" Bennett moved to sit near Charlotte, her body language protective but not threatening. "We've been discussing the differences between various types of childhood experiences," she explained to Mitchell. "Charlotte has been asking wonderful questions about educational opportunities available to children from different economic backgrounds." Mitchell recognized the careful wording Bennett used, designed to frame their actions as educational rather than criminal. Her background in social work was evident in how she had structured Charlotte's experience to feel positive and enlightening rather than threatening or traumatic. However, Mitchell also understood that regardless of Bennett's intentions, she had committed serious crimes that would result in significant legal consequences. "Charlotte," Mitchell said, crouching down to her level, "would you like to return to the palace now? Your parents and your tutors are looking forward to hearing about everything you've learned today." The princess considered this question with the seriousness she typically applied to her studies. "Could I come back and visit sometime?" she asked Bennett. "There's so much more I'd like to learn about how regular children live. Perhaps I could attend a state school for a day, or visit more community centers." Bennett's eyes filled with tears at Charlotte's request, and Mitchell realized that whatever her original motivations, she had genuinely grown fond of the young princess during their day together. "That would be wonderful," Bennett replied softly, "though I think such visits would need to be arranged through proper channels in the future." The extraction process was handled with the same careful attention to Charlotte's emotional well-being that had characterized the entire operation. Rather than immediately removing her from the house, Mitchell allowed her to complete her journal entry about the day's experiences and to say proper goodbyes to Bennett and Chun. This approach, while unconventional, ensured that Charlotte's last memories of the experience remained positive rather than traumatic. As they prepared to leave, Charlotte turned back to Bennett with a question that demonstrated her sophisticated understanding of social dynamics. "Will you get in trouble for teaching me about regular children's lives?" she asked. "Because I asked to learn about these things, and you were very kind to show me." Bennett knelt down to Charlotte's level, her voice gentle but honest. "Sometimes adults make choices that have consequences, even when they believe they're doing something important. But I want you to know that meeting you and seeing your curiosity about the world has been a privilege." The journey back to Kensington Palace was surreal in its normalcy. Charlotte chatted enthusiastically about her day's experiences, seemingly unaware of the massive security operation that had been mobilized to find her. She described her visit to the comprehensive school, her lunch with the family at the community center, and her afternoon of learning about household budgets and public transportation with the excitement of someone who had discovered a fascinating new world. Mitchell found himself both amazed by Charlotte's resilience and disturbed by how easily she had been manipulated through her own intellectual curiosity. The incident would necessitate major changes in royal security protocols, but it also raised challenging questions about how to protect royal children while allowing them to develop normal social awareness and empathy. The palace gates had never looked more welcoming as their vehicle approached the familiar security checkpoint. Word of Charlotte's safe return had preceded them, and Mitchell could see the relief on every staff member's face as their car passed through. Mrs. Murphy stood near the kitchen entrance, dabbing at her eyes with her apron, while Mrs. Pemberton waited near the main entrance with barely contained emotion. In the aftermath of what would become known internally as the Greenwich incident, significant changes were implemented in royal security protocols. Sarah Bennett and David Chin faced serious criminal charges, though Charlotte's testimony about their kindness toward her influenced the court's eventual sentencing. The princess herself emerged from the experience with an enhanced awareness of social inequality that would influence her charitable interests for years to come. Sergeant Mitchell remained Princess Charlotte's primary protection officer for the rest of her childhood, their relationship strengthened by the shared experience of that extraordinary day. He often reflected on the incident as a reminder that protecting royal children required understanding not just physical threats, but also the intellectual curiosity and emotional needs that made them vulnerable to different types of manipulation. The story of Princess Charlotte's educational adventure never reached the public, carefully contained through palace press management and legal restrictions. However, it became a defining moment in royal security history, demonstrating that traditional protection methods needed to evolve to address the sophisticated threats posed by individuals who understood royal psychology well enough to use the family's own values against them. Years later, Charlotte would privately credit her unauthorized educational experience as pivotal in developing her understanding of social responsibility, though she would never fully comprehend how close she had come to becoming the center of an international incident that could have changed the course of royal history. The command center that rapidly materialized in the palace's East Wing hummed with urgent activity as dozens of security personnel coordinated the largest search operation in royal protection history. Sergeant Mitchell found himself at the center of a storm of radio chatter, computer screens, and grim-faced officials who had arrived within minutes of the alert being raised. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a physical force as he realized that every decision made in the next few hours could determine Princess Charlotte's fate. Detective Inspector Harrison had taken charge of the tactical response, his years of experience evident in the calm efficiency with which he deployed resources. "We have units at every major intersection within a 10-mile radius," he reported to Mitchell, pointing to a large electronic map where red dots indicated police positions. "The helicopter unit has thermal imaging capabilities, and we've got traffic cameras pulling footage from every route out of the palace area." Meanwhile, the palace staff struggled to maintain normalcy while fighting their own rising panic. Mrs. Pemberton, Charlotte's tutor, sat in a chair near the command center, her face pale with worry. "She's been asking so many questions lately about how ordinary children live," she told Mitchell when he approached for more information. "Last week, she wanted to know if children in regular families had to ask permission to leave their houses, or if they could just walk to the shops whenever they wanted." This revelation sent a chill through Mitchell's spine. The kidnapper's note had mentioned Charlotte wanting to see how regular people lived, suggesting they had either overheard these conversations or had access to information about the princess's interests and curiosities. The level of planning required for such knowledge indicated this wasn't an opportunistic crime, but something carefully orchestrated over time. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, the royal family's chief psychologist, had been consulted to provide insight into Charlotte's likely behavior under stress. "The princess is remarkably intelligent and has been taught basic safety protocols," Dr. Morrison explained to the assembled team. "However, her natural curiosity and trust in adults could work against her in this situation. If the kidnapper has convinced her this is some sort of adventure or learning experience, she might cooperate willingly, at least initially." The first major breakthrough came when traffic camera footage revealed the white Ford Transit van heading east through Hammersmith at approximately 10:45 a.m. The image quality was sufficient to confirm the license plate number and show two figures in the front seats, though Charlotte wasn't clearly visible. "They're heading toward the M25, Harrison announced, his voice tight with concentration. "That could take them anywhere in the country within a few hours." Mitchell studied the grainy footage, noting details that others might miss. The passenger seat figure looks small enough to be Charlotte, he observed. But I can't tell if she's there voluntarily or under duress. The fact that she's in the front seat suggests she's not restrained, which supports the theory that she's cooperating. As the search expanded, the political implications began to manifest. Sir Geoffrey Whitmore, the palace private secretary, arrived with a team of advisors whose main concern was managing the potential public relations disaster. "We cannot allow news of this incident to reach the media," he declared firmly. "The royal family's security must be seen as impeccable, and any suggestion that a member of the family could be abducted would be catastrophic for public confidence." However, Mitchell knew that keeping the incident secret was becoming increasingly difficult as more resources were deployed. Police units across London were now searching for the van, helicopter support was in the air, and dozens of security personnel were involved in the operation. Rumors would inevitably begin to circulate, and the media's sophisticated monitoring of police radio frequencies meant they might already be aware something significant was happening. The second note arrived at exactly 2:30 p.m., delivered by a motorcycle courier who claimed to have been paid cash by a man outside Victoria Station to deliver the envelope to the palace. The courier's description of the man was vague: medium height, dark clothing, baseball cap pulled low, nothing distinctive enough to aid identification. The note itself was longer and more detailed than the first, written on the same catering company stationery. "Princess Charlotte is experiencing what she calls the most educational day of her life," the note began. "She has visited a comprehensive school in East London, observed children playing in a public park without security escorts, and shared lunch at a community center with families who don't live in palaces. She is unharmed and enthusiastic about her adventure. However, her continued safety depends on compliance with specific demands." The demands themselves were unusual and politically charged. Rather than requesting money or making traditional ransom demands, the kidnapper wanted the royal family to make public statements acknowledging the inequality between their privileged lifestyle and the struggles of ordinary British families. They demanded the establishment of a scholarship fund for underprivileged children and the opening of additional palace grounds to public access. "This isn't about money," Harrison observed as he studied the note. "This is someone with a social agenda who's using Charlotte to make a political point. That could make them more dangerous because they believe their cause justifies their actions." Dr. Morrison agreed with Harrison's assessment. Ideologically motivated kidnappers can be unpredictable because they see themselves as righteous. On the positive side, they're less likely to harm their victim if she's cooperating and if they believe their message is being heard. On the negative side, they might escalate their demands if they feel ignored or if their political goals aren't being met. The afternoon brought additional security footage from various locations across East London, confirming the kidnappers' claims about Charlotte's activities. Camera footage from St. Margaret's Comprehensive School showed the van arriving around 11:30 a.m. and a small figure matching Charlotte's description walking through the playground during morning break. The school's headmaster, when contacted, confirmed that a man claiming to be from a documentary company had received permission to film children at play, and that a young girl had been with him asking questions about school life. She seemed genuinely interested in everything, the headmaster reported when questioned by phone. She wanted to know about school uniforms, homework schedules, and whether children could choose their own subjects. The man with her said she was his niece and was considering attending a state school. Nothing seemed suspicious at the time. This information painted a picture of Charlotte actively participating in her own kidnapping, driven by her curiosity about life beyond palace walls. Mitchell found this both reassuring and troubling. While it suggested she wasn't in immediate physical danger, it also meant she might resist rescue attempts if she felt her educational adventure was being unfairly terminated. The community center footage was even more revealing. Security cameras showed Charlotte sitting at a table with a family consisting of 2 parents and 3 children, sharing what appeared to be a simple lunch while engaging in animated conversation. The body language suggested comfort and engagement rather than fear or distress. However, the man identified as David Chun remained just outside camera range, always positioned to watch the exits and monitor Charlotte's interactions. She's clearly fascinated by the experience, Mitchell observed as he watched the footage for the third time. Look at her posture, her facial expressions. She's treating this as the adventure of a lifetime, not realizing the danger she's actually in. As evening approached, the search operation had expanded to include units from 3 different police forces, air support from 2 helicopters, and surveillance teams monitoring major transportation hubs. Despite these extensive efforts, the van and its occupants had seemingly vanished. The last confirmed sighting was from a petrol station near Dartford at 3:15 p.m., but subsequent searches of the surrounding area had yielded no results. Mitchell felt the pressure mounting as each hour passed without progress. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge had been informed of the situation and were being kept updated hourly, their own anxiety carefully managed by palace staff while they maintained their public schedule to avoid raising suspicions. The knowledge that he was responsible for protecting their daughter weighed heavily on Mitchell's shoulders. The breakthrough finally came from an unexpected source. A traffic warden in Greenwich had noticed the same white van parked in the same residential street for several hours, which violated parking regulations in that area. When she approached to issue a ticket, she had glimpsed a young girl inside who seemed to be writing in what looked like a diary or notebook. The traffic warden's description of the girl matched Charlotte perfectly, and the address she provided gave the search team their first concrete lead in hours. "We have a location," Harrison announced to the assembled team. "Residential street in Greenwich, terraced houses, multiple potential escape routes. We need to move carefully because if they feel cornered, the situation could deteriorate rapidly." As tactical teams prepared for what they hoped would be the final phase of the operation, Mitchell reflected on the day's events. What had started as a routine morning had evolved into a complex crisis that challenged every assumption about royal security. The kidnapper had exploited Charlotte's natural curiosity and desire for normal experiences, turning her own interests against the elaborate protection systems designed to keep her safe. The evening sun cast long shadows across London as police units quietly moved into position around the Greenwich address. Somewhere in that ordinary residential street, Princess Charlotte was about to discover that her educational adventure was coming to an end, though whether that ending would be peaceful or dramatic remained to be seen. The next few hours would determine not only her safe return, but also the future of royal security protocols that had just been proven dangerously inadequate. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Kensington Palace as Sergeant Thomas Mitchell adjusted his ceremonial uniform for the third time that hour. 23 years of service in the Royal Protection Unit had taught him that routine was everything. Yet something felt different about this particular Tuesday in September. The autumn air carried an unusual tension, and even the pigeons seemed more restless than usual as they pecked at crumbs near the ornate fountain. Princess Charlotte, now 11 years old, had always been known for her spirited nature among the palace staff. Unlike her older brother Prince George, who followed protocol with almost military precision, Charlotte possessed an adventurous streak that often kept her security detail on their toes. Her bright blue eyes held a mischievous glint that reminded everyone of her late grandmother, Princess Diana, and her laugh could brighten even the gloomiest London morning. That particular morning, Charlotte had been scheduled for a private tutoring session with Mrs. Eleanor Pemberton, a distinguished educator who had been teaching royal children for over 2 decades. The session was to take place in the palace's East Wing library, a room filled with ancient texts and leather-bound volumes that had educated generations of royalty. However, as Sergeant Mitchell would soon discover, Charlotte had different plans entirely. The first sign of trouble came at precisely 10:15 when Mrs. Pemberton appeared in the security office, her usually composed demeanor showing cracks of concern. Her silver hair was slightly disheveled, and she clutched her leather teaching satchel with white knuckles. "Sergeant Mitchell," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to managing young royals. Princess Charlotte failed to arrive for her session. This is most unusual for her. Mitchell immediately felt his protective instincts sharpen. In his years of service, he had learned that even the smallest deviation from routine could signal something serious. He reached for his radio, the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a well-worn coat. "Control, this is Mitchell. We have a code yellow. Princess Charlotte is not at her designated location. beginning immediate sweep of palace grounds. The palace grounds sprawled across several acres, with manicured gardens, hidden alcoves, and numerous outbuildings that could easily conceal a young girl seeking adventure. Mitchell knew Charlotte's favorite hiding spots, having found her reading in the rose garden gazebo on multiple occasions, or sometimes sketching the palace cats near the old stable block. But, as he methodically searched each location, a growing sense of unease settled in his chest. The search expanded to include other members of the security team. Constable Sarah Davies, a newer addition to the unit but already proving herself capable, took the North Gardens while Sergeant Roberts covered the recreational areas. Each reported back negative findings, their voices carrying increasing concern through the radio static. The palace staff joined the search, from housekeepers to gardeners, all united in their affection for the young princess who always remembered their names and asked about their families. Meanwhile, Charlotte's protection officer, Detective Inspector James Harrison, arrived on scene after being summoned from his brief morning break. Harrison had been assigned specifically to Charlotte for the past 2 years, and he understood her personality better than most. "She's not missing," he told Mitchell with confidence that came from experience. "She's exploring. The question is where, and whether she's gotten herself into trouble this time." As the search entered its second hour, Mitchell decided to expand the perimeter beyond the immediate palace grounds. This decision would prove crucial, though he couldn't have known it at the time. The surrounding area of Kensington included busy streets, parks where the public had access, and numerous vehicles constantly coming and going. The thought of Charlotte venturing beyond the secure palace walls sent a chill down his spine. It was then that Mitchell remembered the delivery schedule. Tuesday mornings typically brought various service vehicles to the palace, florists preparing for upcoming state functions, caterers planning menus, and maintenance crews performing routine upkeep. Each vehicle underwent security screening, but the process wasn't foolproof, especially when dealing with a clever young girl who had grown up understanding the rhythms of palace life. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. Mrs. Agnes Murphy, who had worked in the palace kitchens for nearly 40 years, approached Mitchell with information that would change everything. Her weathered hands twisted her apron as she spoke, her Irish accent thick with worry. "Sergeant, I saw the little princess this morning, around 9:30 it was. She was talking to that nice young man from the catering company, the one with the dark hair who always brings the fresh flowers for the state dining room." Mitchell's blood ran cold. He knew exactly who Mrs. Murphy meant. David Chun, a 25-year-old employee of Pemberton Catering Services who had been making regular deliveries to the palace for about 6 months. Background checks had cleared him, but Mitchell's instincts were screaming that something was wrong. "Where exactly did you see them, Mrs. Murphy?" "Near the service entrance, they were." The princess seemed quite interested in his van, asking all sorts of questions about the flowers inside. "You know how curious she gets about everything." Mrs. Murphy's face crumpled with worry. "I thought nothing of it at the time. The child loves learning about different things, doesn't she?" Mitchell was already moving, speaking rapidly into his radio as he headed toward the service area of the palace. "All units, Priority 1. Princess Charlotte may be in contact with David Chun from Pemberton Catering. Vehicle description, white Ford Transit van, license plate." He paused, realizing he needed to check the visitor log for the exact details. The service area was empty when Mitchell arrived, but fresh tire tracks in the gravel suggested a vehicle had recently departed. His heart pounded as he considered the implications. If Charlotte had somehow gotten into that van, either by choice or otherwise, she could already be miles away from the palace. The thought of explaining this to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge made his stomach clench with dread. Detective Inspector Harrison joined Mitchell at the service area, his face grim with understanding. "We need to treat this as a potential abduction," he said quietly, though both men hoped they were overreacting. "I'll contact the Metropolitan Police to put out an alert for the van. We need helicopter support and roadblocks on all major routes out of London." As if summoned by their worst fears, Mitchell's radio crackled to life with a report from Constable Davies. "Sergeant, I found something. There's a note tucked under the windshield wiper of the duty vehicle near the East Gate. It's addressed to the Royal Protection Unit." Mitchell and Harrison exchanged glances before running toward the East Gate. The note, written in neat handwriting on what appeared to be pages torn from a catering order pad, contained words that sent ice through Mitchell's veins. The princess is safe for now. She wanted to see how regular people live. Consider this an educational opportunity. She will be returned unharmed if her family follows simple instructions. No police involvement beyond palace security. More details to follow. The note wasn't signed, but the implications were clear. This wasn't a random kidnapping, but something planned, possibly by someone who knew Charlotte's curious nature and had been observing the palace routines. Mitchell's mind raced through the possibilities. Was David Chun acting alone, or was he part of something larger? How had they managed to get Charlotte to leave voluntarily? Harrison was already on his phone, speaking in urgent, clipped tones to his superiors. The situation had escalated beyond a simple missing person case. This was now a royal security crisis that could have international implications. Within minutes, the palace would be swarming with additional security personnel, and the search for Princess Charlotte would expand across the entire metropolitan area. Mitchell stared at the note, his trained eyes searching for any clues about the writer's identity or intentions. The paper was standard catering company stationery, available to any employee. The handwriting was careful and deliberate, suggesting someone educated rather than desperate. Most troubling of all was the phrase, educational opportunity, which suggested the kidnapper knew enough about Charlotte's personality to understand what might motivate her to cooperate. As emergency protocols activated around him, Mitchell made a silent promise to the absent princess. 23 years of protecting the royal family had prepared him for many scenarios, but none quite like this. He would find Charlotte, no matter what it took, and ensure her safe return to the palace where she belonged. The real question was whether they could do so before the situation spiraled completely out of control. The morning that had started with routine palace duties was rapidly becoming the most challenging case of Mitchell's career. Somewhere in London, Princess Charlotte was in the hands of strangers, and every minute that passed made her recovery more complicated. The hunt for the white Ford Transit van was about to begin in earnest, with the full resources of the British security establishment mobilized to bring the young princess home safely.